Okay, let's talk about Logan Paul, who is training in Puerto Rico to fight Floyd Mayweather. His brother Jake Paul signed a deal with Showtime for his next fight. I mean, BC, are these two brothers the next big thing in boxing?
You know, it's very interesting how rapid this has turned around with both Paul brothers going from being YouTube names, right? Trolls, comedians, if you will, and turning it into a somewhat legitimate boxing career. The key news here is we already know, as you mentioned, Floyd Mayweather is going to fight Logan Paul June 6th on Showtime pay-per-view. But it was Jake Paul, Logan's younger brother at 23, who kind of stole the buildup to that fight with the whole gotcha hat scenario and the almost pro wrestling style themed shenanigans that we saw in which Mayweather fired back and fought him. Now we have Showtime stepping in. The surprise in offering Jake Paul the money and the deal. The surprise is that Jake Paul fought his last two fights on Triller Fight Club, which was the upstart sort of left field street pay-per-view business here, in which they've mixed together concerts with boxing. Now Showtime getting involved, and while that might look like a surprise, let's not forget Showtime was the people that put on Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor, which is the second highest grossing pay-per-view in combat sports history, and paired boxer versus MMA fighter. It's difficult to see whether we're going to end up here Floyd Mayweather going through Logan and challenging his brother, or whether Jake Paul goes the route of seeking out ex-MMA fighters to box against. It remains to be seen, because all parties are quiet as they negotiate what will be Jake Paul's first opponent, the date, the location, all of that stuff. But big news to see Showtime, which has built traditional boxing pay-per-view powers like Floyd Mayweather, Canelo, Manny Pacquiao, now Gervonta Davis, making a firm step forward into the more carnival celebrity crossover world.
Okay, and I mean, with that theme, the carnival celebrity part of it, you've got two brothers that are boxing. BC, when are we going to get these two going against each other?
Now, that is a question that I'm sure a lot of us in the journalism game want to ask him, because it's been so bizarre up to this point, all the theatrics that come with these two YouTube crossovers and trying to make a deal in boxing. Let's not forget the Klitschko brothers, which were heavyweight champions in legitimate boxing over the last couple of decades. They'd always promised their mother they would not fight each other, even though both of them ruled over the division, holding all four titles for some time. I don't know what this means for the Paul brothers in that regard, but I think of the two, Jake, who's 3-0 as a professional, seems to be more invested in maybe trying to do this as legitimate as possible. Will he turn out to be boxing's version of Kimbo Slice? It's interesting to sort of make that comparison, but either way, people care, and they're going to watch when Jake Paul puts the gloves back on.
I don't know how you get two heels to turn heel, but I guess we'll find out down the stretch. Boxing has been pushed to the rear view with the emergence of MMA and UFC, in a sense. So what does the emergence of the Paul brothers mean for the sport overall?
You know, it's weird in a sense, because you can only put so much lipstick on the pig here. I love boxing. Boxing will also break your heart, and it's a ridiculous game that has long sort of welcomed in so many shenanigans and different forces going behind it, controversially, let's say. It's not much of a stretch for boxing to have this era that we're seeing right now. Maybe it started with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones coming out of retirement for their exhibition last year that did big numbers, but it's certainly extending across the lines of these celebrity crossover ones, whether it be the Paul brothers against ex-NBA players, retired UFC fighters, whatever. It's showing you that at the very least, if the best aren't going to fight the best in the traditional sense of boxing, there's still a hungry market, and certainly for this crossover type of just getting that big fight pay-per-view feeling, where it's two guys going together, where you know their backstories. Okay, are the Paul brothers, confirmed pros, future champions? No. They do take the sport seriously, though, and they make fun theater, whether you're into the whole YouTube generation and the trolling that goes on behind the scenes with that or not. Is it a black mark against the sport right now at the moment? You can always argue that with boxing, because it always seems to be leaning in both directions at once. Yet the old sport will be all right, and we still have some very good actual fights this calendar year that we're expecting, that I think there's room for everyone in this circus.
I mean, and that's the credit to them, I guess. I mean, yeah, they've got a lot of detractors, but at the same time, they do take the sport seriously, which is certainly a credit to them and the sport itself.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.